Everyone, thank you for tuning in. I'm Valerie, and this is our Ask the Expert interview series here on our Banyan Botanicals channel. So today we have a very special conversation that we are very grateful and excited to talk about and discuss. So as an Ayurvedic-inspired health and wellness company, we care and we're invested and we truly believe in the health of people as well as the health of the planet. And this extends to all aspects of our business, including and importantly, including how we handle our sourcing. That's our sourcing of our herbs and our ingredients, all the decisions that go into the products that we support and create and offer out there. It also goes into things like supply chain management and deciding just which herbs and plants and ingredients we're going to be working with. So joining us today to discuss this topic that we are very inspired by and grateful to talk about is our VP of Sourcing and Product Design, Tyler Wauters. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm just having Tyler join right now, inviting him to join. Along the way, feel free to chat those in. Let us know what's on your mind. Also, let us know where you're joining from. We do love to see our greater community joining for these conversations. Yeah, someone has tips about skincare, and yes, our website has amazing resources and guides. There's Tyler. Hello, Tyler. Welcome.
Hello.
Great to see you too. So we've already done an intro for you. We know who you are. We're so very grateful to have a bit of your time today to discuss sustainable sourcing from our Banyan side.
Absolutely. Love to get into the conversation.
Totally
Sorry
fine.
for being a little late. But
all right, we have a lot of hearts coming in. Thanks everyone for joining. We have some community from New Mexico joining us. Feel free to let us know where you're joining us from, because we love to just see the reaches of our online community here. So Tyler, I'd love to, I don't even know the answer to this question, but I'd love to ask you about your background in this field, because I know that you came into the Banyan realm with a lot of experience and passion for this whole idea of sourcing and plants and plant love and sustainability. So will you tell us a bit more about how you got here?
All right, I'll try my best to give you an abbreviated story, but to give a peek into that journey, I guess fortunately, I found my passion early in life. My passion really from the beginning revolved around just being in nature and being connected to plants, and had the opportunity to grow up in rural Wisconsin on a fish farm, and it was kind of a swampland area and really acted like a wildlife refuge. And we had just such a diversity of plants and old growth weeping willows, and oftentimes now I transport myself back to my childhood and I can hear and imagine just the red-winged blackbirds around me and fireflies and the fish nipping at the water and the wind moving through the weeping willows, which are creating ripples across the ponds. And we had our families of geese and ducks and sandhill cranes, and it was a pretty amazing childhood. And I definitely grew up in the imaginal realm. At the same time, I also learned how to tend a farm. We had quite a large orchard, and we had to take care of the ponds and just the community that lived around us. And so just stepped into really deep relationships at an early age. And luckily, with my early travels, I found herbalism and Ayurveda together. And some of the lineage of people that I got to work with stem from Frank Cook to Isla Burgess to Seven Song to Claudia Welch, to Sonia Masoko, to Dr. Lad. And while pursuing education, I really, from the beginning, was introduced to herbalism and Ayurveda together, and just kind of wove those two together throughout life. And at the same time, to make a living, I worked on different farms. That's where I was introduced to biodynamics and permaculture and regenerative farming and organic and all these different techniques in these different locations. And that led me to medicinal herb farming and operating education gardens, to then founding programs over a decade ago that were focused on personal development, yoga, Ayurveda, and herbalism. And I think it was around 5-6 years ago now, I was leading a field studies program, which was bringing people into wild spaces. And I had reached out to companies in the area. I've been based out of Southern Oregon now for about 15 years, but I was reaching out to companies in the area, just wanting to really offer enrichments and bring the teams together. And Banyan was one of those teams. And I had kind of made a proposal to bring the team into a 3-day retreat, kind of wilderness setting, and really discuss bioregional Ayurveda and that concept. And luckily, Banyan said yes. And that led to 5 trips with the Banyan Botanicals team and a lot of different team members. And that forged the relationship. One last thing to note there is, throughout the journey of being an educator and a farmer, I also have been a wild crafter for over a decade. And that's where I go out into wild spaces and collect plants. And I've primarily done that on the West Coast to a larger scale. And that introduced me to different companies and just sourcing communities, and kind of piqued my interest in supply chain management. And so a background in herbalism and Ayurveda, wild crafting, farming, that kind of all coalesced together and help me step into the role I am now, which is supporting Banyan and sourcing and product design, and really trying to build our future, a strong, healthy future for a company that's allied with the planet.
Sounds like you're right where you were meant to be, Tyler. I love that all of those interests of yours and your background seem to just really come together in your work here at Banyan. And it does show, like, you're a big part of the team and holds a lot for us as well. So we're very grateful for your influence in all the different realms. Now, you mentioned something about scale. And from your past work, it sounds like a lot of it was regional and in particular areas. But when it comes to Banyan, I mean, this is it's much more than regional at times, especially when it comes to our Ayurvedic herbs, as well as, we do have our bioregional herbs as well. So for our community here that's watching and listening, can we get into the conversation a bit about the sustainability of the sourcing and what that's look like on a big scale?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say part of that maturation process on a personal level really was being centered around being a place-based kind of herbalist, and of course applying the Ayurvedic framework to anything that I do. And stepping into Banyan really broadened that horizon and widened that scale. And when I think about sustainable sourcing, what comes to mind is kind of seeing through the lens of longevity, thinking about kind of the multi-generational mindset. And sustainable sourcing for me is really tangible, no matter what environment I'm in, whether it's a wild space or a farm. What's tangible about sustainability is if you have the opportunity to visit a space, to work with a group of farmers, or to work with a wild collector community, or to work with a location and geography. And the more time you go to it, you have a very tangible kind of energetic vibrational feel to what is sustainable and is this sustainable. And so you're looking into the health of the environment, right? Is the environment feel healthy? And let's say I first visited a space in 2010, and now I've been visiting it for 13 years. I'm tracking the health of that environment. And if I start to see it from a vibrational or very physical level, in a way that it feels like it's declining, then I'm starting to observe patterns that are telling me that maybe this isn't sustainable. Also, when working with wild collector communities or farmers, you're also tuning into the kind of their well-being and their health and their vibrancy as a community and as people. And if you feel and you're tracking that maybe there's stress, maybe there's fatigue based on, you know, the environment itself and the type of harvest something might be, and also the economics of it, right? And just wanting to thrive and provide for family and provide for community. You're really tracking those things. And if you're starting to see those diminish in any way or wane, then you have to question, is this sustainable or not? And, you know, when you track from plant to plant, you're also collecting different parts, right? And some plants have very limited regions, some have broader regions. And that's why sustainable and just the definition of it, really, it's not defined because it looks different from plant to plant, bioregion to bioregion. So you have to learn about each one of those plants, each part of a plant, and then all of the bioregions as well. And so, for example, if we're tracking a plant population, let's say we're collecting Boswellia or Arjuna, right, 2 trees, and we want to say that plant population from the beginning, we identify maybe there's 1,000 tree species of Boswellia and 1,000 of Arjuna. And by year 5, let's say that population is diminishing, that's letting you know, oh, this is not sustainable. Ideally, what you want to see is that population maintain and really grow. And when we get into the crux of supporting wild collector communities and farmers, we as an industry and as customers, we want products to be accessible, right? So it's a fine line, because what that puts kind of the industry and at large is kind of that interesting position where we want to provide products that are available to everybody. And it's easy to kind of price people out and price families out. And at the same time, we also want to manage a supply chain and integrity, right? And be supporting and allowing farmers and wild collectors to thrive. And there's a fine balance to it. And so what I see today and moving forward is, right now it's one thing to pay for the ingredient, but it's second to pay for tending, right? And so what it means to tend to that location, to tend to that plant. And so let's say we are working with that Arjuna or that Boswellia, there's education around the harvesting techniques of that Arjuna bark. There's harvesting techniques to that Boswellia resin. And then in terms of propagating and supporting those populations, there's seasonality to those, whether it's before monsoon or after monsoon. And, you know, you're going to be working with these species in India, but at least we are. And you know, those collectors need to be monitoring those areas and those plants for much broader time frame than the actual harvest itself. And so there's this whole kind of realm of tending, which we're learning to be advocates for, which we're learning to compensate for, which is, you know, a growing edge to the fair trade concept, and a growing edge to what you know, to the true cost of working with natural ingredients that are derived from the earth. And so sustainability is about longevity. It's about thinking about multi-generations and into the future. Is this environment, is this plant, how can we tend to it and take care of it and work with it in a way that our children, right, and the future generations also have access and get to forge those relationships themselves. And so it's a dance, but it's a really beautiful dance. That's what makes sourcing and just managing supply chains amazing, because you're bringing communities together, you're getting to learn about different geographies, and you're linking them all up as a global body. right? And that's, that's a vast story. So I could go into that in way more detail, but I'll keep it there.
It sounds like really beautiful work, Tyler. So many different areas that seem really heart-centered as well, like not just thinking about like the plants, but then the tenders, which is it's a really sweet idea and very much at the heart of Ayurveda as well. The health of everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And also to kind of note the parts of plants, I often think of fruits as gifting life. And if you're harvesting roots, you can be taking life. And not saying that that's a good or a bad thing, but it just gives you a sense of the gravity of the parts of plants that you're working with. So let's say you're working with Anantamul or Jatamansi, you're taking the life of that plant. And so there has to be a deeper understanding of that plant and that ecosystem, and kind of an integrity. There's a gravity that comes with that harvest, and your ability to maintain that population and tend to that environment. So it takes time. Where you might have something like Amalaki or Bibitaki, where you're harvesting the fruit. And I often see fruits as like the gifts that plants are giving. And everybody in the environment, all the animals and the birds, are collecting those fruits, and we're part of that collector community, but we're not taking the life of a plant. It's something that they're giving, right? And so whether it's a leaf or a bark or a fruit or a root or the whole plant or several of those together, we're also tuning into that. And there's different forms of sustainability and kind of just knowledge and time that one needs to carry to do that in an ethical way.
And I've loved hearing some of your stories too, some of our inner team meetings where we get to hear a lot of storytelling from you, Tyler, and it's wonderful to see our partners and see how they care for particular roots. I remember hearing a story about that, of like harvesting only sections of the roots so that there was enough to be left in the ground as well. It's really beautiful work. Yeah. Now, okay, so I'm sure there's challenges that have come along with this work. So let's honor those a bit too and speak to the challenges. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I would say there's many, as you alluded to. To start with, maybe just extreme weather events, right? And kind of climate change that's constantly occurring, but definitely is under many influences now. So whether it's heat, drought, monsoon, pest, all of those can drastically influence our supply chain and drastically impact farmers. And any given season, there's going to be a handful of suppliers, within a farmer network that are influenced by just the environment itself. And so I would say that can be a hurdle to just sustainable sourcing and managing a supply chain. An example, let's say an area goes on drought for a year or multiple years, and it makes it hard to grow maybe 1, 2, 3 primary herbs. Then you're forced to, as a company, to either just go out of stock on that ingredient, right? Not be able to offer it to customers, or you pivot and you forge other relationships. And so when you look at sourcing diversification, it's really important to hold a lot of relationships. But at the same time, if you're not a large scale company, then really you're going to be deeply invested in a few. And when those partners are influenced by natural events, right, you're in it with them. And so again, there's a cascade effect to that. There's also, I guess I would kind of put it as a cultural revolution, changing of family and community structure. So in general, seems to be kind of on a global scale, less and less interest in farming. And so I think when we look in our history, right, a lot of us have roots to farming in some capacity, and I would say all of us do. But as we see kind of our cultures evolve and our ability to innovate as humanity, we see kind of a change away from being closely allied and working alongside the earth to really being in kind of very firm human-built environments and developing technologies. And I'm not calling anything out by any means. It's just acknowledging a part of our process and a part of our evolution. And so with that, there's less interest in farming. And then in terms of a value set, it's it's hard to really place a real value on the produce or the herbs, right? Like what it takes and how that translates to becoming an ingredient in a product, and to get to somebody's personal apothecary, like to value what that takes. It often is undervalued in the eyes of the farming community, right? And I kind of look at farmers as athletes, right? There's a life expectancy to somebody that is in a professional sport, right? Maybe that's 10, 15, 20 years. That could be an amazing career in any given sport, but it takes a toll on your body. And there's a point in which you will transition from that work. And farmers, it's the same thing. You're out there in the elements and you're using every part of your body, and you are truly a farming athlete. And so there's a period of time which your body can do that. And let's say that's 15, 20, 30 years. And so I place a high value on that 20 or 30 year period that somebody can farm at a high level and be out in the elements the way that they are. So I just want to give just a lot of love to anybody who's a farmer and anybody who's a wild collector, a gardener. We know what that feels like, and when it's amazing and it's invigorating, and at the same time there is a toll that takes place on the body. So we see kind of that shift to where there's less and less people in the farming community, wild collector community. And I think that goes hand in hand, again, with the technologies and just broader career opportunities and us evolving to be a global culture. So I think a lot of, when we look into the future, it's looking at ways in which we can strengthen the farming community and have farming continue to be a really amazing opportunity for families and for our communities. And so I think that's part of our work. We also kind of look at economics and general economic health. We have, politics and geopolitical questions and concerns. All of those can play a role in sustainable sourcing and supply chain management. So there's no shortage of obstacles. And so, there's a lot to sift through, but those are a few that
makes sense, all of it, and a lot to think about. The fact that you're holding all this is incredible, Tyler. I want to ask a question too about, like, as a consumer, as a like from the other side of it, like those of us that aren't farming, that we're going to the grocery store to get our produce, and maybe we're trying to grow at home, which is really tricky to do as well. But what kind of encouragement can you offer, like that side of of the community? Like, how can we do that with reverence?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I think we're all in it together, right? And it's just it's about allyship. It's about developing friendships and connections and relationships that span our communities. And I look at kind of when you have the opportunity to spend a lot of time outside, you form relationships to place, you form relationships to nature. And in that relationship, you learn to love, right? And you learn to care, and it inspires tending within you. And we can all relate to that, whether it's for ourselves or whether it's with our family, a friend, a loved one, right? As we step deeper and deeper into those relationships, it inspires us to care. And so we're all in it together, and we all have that baseline, right? We're all wanting to be allies and be in right relationship, good relationship, and striving towards that. And I think that's a lot of the practice of Ayurveda, is cultivating that practice of awareness. So you have that self-love that's authentic, right? And with that, you move in the world in a way that that love kind of radiates out, and there's an instant allyship and kind of learning and dance we all take part in together. And so in terms of your question around reverence, and let's say you're not somebody that has a background in farming, and maybe you don't have access to a wild space, and those relationships are just beginning, right? You know, so I think one, it's seeking out that diversity within a community to seek out who are the people that are gardening, who are the knowledge holders of a given area, and those ecosystems and those plants. And those resources might be in the books, it might be in the form of people. You know, go to presentations, just try to allocate and find time to do that. And then in terms of just personal reverence, try to find that time in your life. It could even be in your house with a house plant. If there's a nearby park or forest, you know, some type of a trail, a space that you can go to and just sit or walk and be in these spaces and with these plants. And I think just being with each other, that gratitude will be ignited, and that connection will be ignited. And in that, we will all together want to take care of ourselves. We will want to take care of the earth, and we will all be then connected in our effort to really hold a sustainability framework that spans not only our bioregions, but the globe. And then as it relates to Banyan and the broader industry, the industry's ability to maintain sustainable supply chains and to support both the environment and the people that are a part of it.
You know what? You grew up in a dream. I like hearing about your childhood, just dreamy environment of just like, I could just imagine you running and just getting into everything in nature. But from that like dreamer mindset and with this heart-centered work, what would you love to see in this industry and in the world of sustainable sourcing for the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, for the future, I think I would love to see, similar to what I just shared, I just love to see kind of a community effort for us to kind of bond together and to really have that collective, like to cultivate that reverence of respect, of honor, of awe, of love to place. And to do that on an individual level is one thing, but to do it in a partnership, to do it as a family, as a community, and then broader and broader communities is part of our work. And so I think we can do that on both a kind of an energetic, spiritual level, but then a practical level would be participating in the kind of the surroundings around you. So that's going out for a hike, being in the garden, just forming and forging those relationships with plants. It might mean small steps like getting a small garden started in your windowsill or outside. It might mean, you know, donating to your local nature conservancy. It might mean, you know, working with your local apothecaries and meeting those herbalists and, you know, working with your practitioners to identify what are their communities that they're tapped into, and asking more and more questions around where do those ingredients come from, and, you know, researching the different businesses and the efforts that those businesses are putting forth to manage sustainable supply chains. So I guess in essence, just starting to allocate time to the importance of seeking that information and also participating in the environment around you. So really try to ignite your own personal relationship to nature and at the same time research and ask questions with your local practitioners, herbalists, farmers, and companies. And those two go together really well. When you just do one without the other, I find that that only gets us so far. But you, as a person, every individual needs to have that love and cultivate that love and connection to place to kind of inspire that spirit of tending and stewardship. And at the same time, that compels you to research and to ask questions and build that community, and it all kind of goes hand in hand. So I think that's what I would love to call in, is just that community connection, and for us to all be in that collective prayer, and at the same time, day to day, putting in the effort to be in those relationships, and putting in the effort to seek out kind of the wisdom holders, and learn about the communities that you're participating in already through the practitioners, farmers, wildcrafters, etc.
So beautiful. Are you able to share with us any big dreams or plans, or what we might have coming up as far as on the Banyan side? Anything? I know last summer you were seeking out some important plants and going on some long treks to find them. Is there anything like that coming up?
I would say in general, I just want to say, just Banyan as a team, I think we're united in our effort to really be stewards of the earth and be stewards of people, and not saying that we embody that all the time. Like, we are a growing body and a growing group of people, and that's a big part of why I'm here and why we're here together and as a team. Like, we love doing this. And right now we're really in an interesting place as Banyan. I would say we're definitely working towards sourcing diversification, and what that looks like is just being diversified across geographies. And so a majority of our supply chain is centered in India, which it should be. That's the tradition which we are birthed from as a company, and we want to continue to uphold that tradition and be connected to the area Ayurveda and the Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia that we work with is birthed from. And so that is going to continue to be our focus. And then branching from that, we're looking at what does it mean to be more localized, right? We're interested in monitoring our carbon footprint. We're interested in monitoring our general impact on the earth. So it forces us to consider being more localized. So we look at domestic sourcing, and we also look at more diversification, whether it's to other geographies that lend themselves towards having similar climates that hold the pharmacopoeia that we work with. We're also looking at analog herbs, and so or correlate herbs. So those would be herbs where, let's say, we're seeing a traditional Ayurvedic ingredient that might be flagged as threatened or endangered, which several Ayurvedic herbs are. A few to call out would be jatamansi, kutki. And so you're looking for what are the analogs to those when on that generational mindset. And that takes time to seek. And those might grow in different geographies. They might be related by their chemical ecology, by their botanical features, and other things. So I guess sourcing diversification, we're also looking at continued trips to monitor specific plants that we want to get under the fair trade umbrella, like Boswellia, Arjuna, Bilba. We also want to get, work with, I guess, certification bodies like Fair Wild and Fair for Life. So we're wanting to seek out those partnerships with wild collectors and with farms that allow us to move in that direction. And so whether that be Fair Wild, Kutki, or Jatamansi, that's the project you alluded to that I got to embark on last year in Nepal. But this year it's more going to be centered around, being in India and looking at continued Fair Wild and Fair for Life projects there. We're also seeking out a partnership with other farms in locations like Costa Rica that are more centered around regenerative farming and agroforestry, and we're seeing how we can implement that across our supply chain. And then on a local level here in Southern Oregon, we have our own test plats of trying out, different regenerative techniques, whether that's through compost or no-till, or it's supporting biodiversity and doing species surveys. So all of that together, we're putting the pieces together in regenerative farming and fair trade, at the social level of fair trade, and also the environmental level of fair trade looks different every location and with every group of people. And so just continued travel this year.
Well, I'm glad we caught you in between all of your trips, Tyler. I know you were just gone last week. Yeah. Well, this is such a wonderful conversation, and just thank you for sharing all of your insights and your just willingness to be so open and tell some of these stories to our community here online. Big appreciations for that. Is there any final inspiration that you'd love to leave us with, Tyler?
I'm simple. Just love yourself, connect to the environment that's around you, cultivate gratitude, and let's continue to be allies. So I think that would be the inspiration. And again, just grateful to be here, and thank you to everybody and to you, Valerie.
Definitely. Yes, we hope to catch you again, Tyler, so we can have more conversations with you as well. Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you everyone for tuning in and joining us. We do appreciate all of you being here. Feel free to chat us if you have questions that come up after you've listened to this conversation. We're happy to answer anything that you have. All right, thank you all. Bye-bye. Thank you, Tyler.
Bye.